Hi friends, happy Friday. Actually, when you see this, it's not going to be Friday. Happy whatever day it is that you are watching this. So this video is going to be connected to your Snapfact notes that we have been taking on the Stone Age. So what I need you to do at this moment in time is take out your Snapfact notes in your binder, okay? We are going to be completing page 1 of your notes. Now, for those of you who are not fully remote, you already have a certain number of Snapfact boxes filled in, but there are some friends who are fully remote. So I am going to start this video from the very beginning so our fully remote friends can get the information that you guys already got in social studies class. And what you guys who have been in social studies class can do is just kind of fast forward the video until you get to a part where you're like, ooh, haven't got that yet, okay? Or you can just watch from the beginning and double check and make sure that you have all of the notes correctly filled in. Now, what I'm going to ask that you do is take a picture of your note page and upload it into Google Classroom so that I know you completed the rest of your notes. Because when I see you back in class, except for our fully remote friends, who we love and miss very much, when I see you back in class, you're going to need to have them all filled in because we're picking up with the second set, okay? So, here we go. Your Snapfact page will look like this. Number 1, mine's already filled in. For some of you, like I said, those boxes will already be filled in as well. So the Stone Age, we are talking about a time way long ago, okay? We're talking the earliest known period of time of human culture, okay? Now, it might be hard to believe, but people who look exactly like you and me in towns that look exactly like this were not always the case. That wasn't always a thing, okay? So what I need you to do before we really dive in the rest of the way is to look at your very first open Snapfact box, and I need you to record the following definition, okay? Now I'm gonna hold this up to the screen because I'm also still gonna chat a little bit, and I would like you to write down on your Snapfact box what I have in mine, okay? So we have our little title box, and you need to record this. It's the earliest known period of human culture. Now you guys, what is this time period called? The Stone Age, right? Maybe you've heard people refer to things that are very old by calling it, has that been around since the Stone Age, right? Now, also let's think of the name, the Stone Age. Well, we call it this because all of the tools and weapons used back then were made out of just, bare bones things that humans could find, like stones, rocks, okay? The occasional piece of wood. All right, they did not have an Ace Hardware or a True Value or a Lowe's or a Home Depot or any other store like that to go get the accessories they would need to hunt or use for any other helpful purpose. Stores weren't even a glimmer of an idea yet. Now I'm going to put the page down. If you need more time, pause the video because I'm going to keep going, okay? So, like I said, they did not have hardware stores back then. They couldn't go and buy tools or weapons that they would need. Now, these people I keep referring to, all right, they have a special name. We could keep calling them earliest humans over and over again, but we want to sound 6th grade official, okay? So a term that I'm going to be using a lot, that you will be hearing a lot, is in your next Snapfact box. It says another name for early humans is hominids, okay? So whenever you hear me refer to hominids, you know that's just a synonym in the official term for the earliest humans, all right? Now, in that next Snapfact box, what I want you to do is write hominids. You will also see another word that I'd like you to fill in the Snap Fact box. Now it said their original homes were in Africa. Now that's because we can trace back all humans to the continent that we know today as Africa, okay? All humans of their original homes were in Africa. Now, over the many years, they dispersed outwards to other land. But we can trace all human culture back to the continent of Africa. And that's just a nice little fun fact from me to you. And I do believe that that information was in the Continents of the World video that I had you guys watch and take a little quiz on. So hopefully that sounds familiar, okay? All right, so these early humans, okay, they don't necessarily look like us. They don't necessarily talk like us, all right? They don't have the types of materials, resources, daily routine that we have, okay? When I say daily routine, I want you to think about what your daily routine is like. Do you wake up, maybe brush your teeth, maybe listen to some music when you get ready for your day, maybe you walk your dog, maybe you hang out with your siblings, maybe you watch a show, maybe you read a book. Okay, now I want you to pretend that none of those things that I listed existed, okay? Like I said, we're talking about the earliest humans, hominids, okay? Way back before any of the stuff that we're used to nowadays was even a glimmer of an idea to later on be invented, okay? Now, many of these early hominids, because I was just saying, think about what your routine every day is. Well, they had a routine too. Their daily routine was traveling around from place to place to place to place to place, trying to find food and water. You need a food source and a water source so that you don't go hungry and that you don't get dehydrated, right? That would not be good. We know that we need to eat and we need to drink in order to survive. But when you guys get hungry, where do you go? You probably go to your pantry, maybe you go to your cabinets, maybe you go to your fridge or your freezer because you might have some snacks or food at home, right? If you get thirsty, maybe you go and you pour from your water filter in your refrigerator, right? Do you think the earliest humans, these hominids, had any of that at their disposal? No, right? So there's a special term that we give to those who travel from place to place to place to place in search of food and water. Maybe you know this term already, okay? And it starts with an N, and I'm hoping you've heard it before, but if not, you're gonna hear it for the first time. Many early hominids were nomads. And nomads is a term that we give to people who travel from place to place to place to place to place in order to find food and water. Now, I know that I have only written food here, but I'd like you to also write water, please. So, if you need another second, you can pause the video and you can continue to jot in that note, okay? Do you think that sounds tiring, having to travel around from location, location, location in search of food and water? Maybe there'd be some days where you weren't even successful at finding a food source. And by the way, what food source do you think they were finding? Do you think they were finding a grocery store? No, they were having to hunt animals. So gee, they would probably have to follow the same type of travel pattern as different animals that they were hunting, right? It'd probably be hard to just settle in and create a little home base for yourself if you're always on the move, right? Does that sound tiring? Kind of sounds a little tiring to me. Well, let's take a look at the next Snap Fact box, okay? And it is titled The Old Stone Age. Now, we're going to use this term a lot, but if you want to know a little fun fact, a very official term for the Old Stone Age is called the Paleolithic age, or the Paleolithic era, okay? So, fun fact for the day, you learned something new. Well, hopefully you've been learning a lot of new things in this video, but if you want to toss out Paleolithic era at the dinner table tonight, just know that that's the fancy schmancy term for Old Stone Age. Now let's look in that next box. It says, early hominids did not know how to blank. Now guess what? We could probably put a lot of different terms in that blank, but the one I'm talking about is they did not know how to farm. And I'll give you a second to all gasp, because like we're so used to the concept of farms and farming. We are so used to that because farms and farming is a concept that has been around as long as we've been around, right? But farming, if you think about it, that had to be invented. The earliest people, they didn't just know how to farm. Like anything in life, that had to be thought of, created, invented, and then implemented and used, right? They didn't just right off the bat have the idea of, oh, hey, let's plant things in the ground so we can have access to food whenever we needed it. No, they did not yet know how to farm, okay? So they lived by hunting and gathering. Now, I hope you've heard the term hunting and gathering before. Those who went out hunting were referred to as the hunters, and those who went out gathering were referred to as the gatherers. So these earliest people, these hominids, they were kind of in two categories. They were all pretty much nomads. But within the group of people who, were traveling around looking for food and water, there were those in the group that were hunters and those in the group that were gatherers. Now, I'm going to pause if you need more time to jot in this note, okay? And then unpause when you're ready for the rest. Here's the thing. So when I say gather, what do you think? What do you think that means? What did the gatherers gather in the first place? Well, anything you didn't have to hunt, right? Animals, they clearly needed to be hunted, right? But things like berries, different plants, water, you don't have to hunt those. You can hunt for them in terms of looking for them, but you don't need to kill a berry bush, right? So there were the hunters. They would go out and they tended, and usually in groups, because it was safer to hunt in groups, okay? And they would take care of hunting animals, but then there were those, it was their job to go out and scavenge, which is a really good vocab word. They would scavenge for other things to eat, right? As well as water sources. So we have the hunters and we have the gatherers, because farming wasn't created yet. We're getting there, okay? Your next Stone Age box is titled the Middle Stone Age. So we just briefly went over Old Stone Age. Now we're gonna briefly go over Middle Stone Age. I gave you the fancy schmancy term for Old Stone Age. Do you remember what it was? Paleolithic era. Do you want the fancy schmancy term for the Middle Stone Age? It's called the Mesolithic era. Fancy term, so if you want to throw that one out at the dinner table tonight too, go for it. So, the Middle Stone Age, it says in your box, hominids learned to make better blank. Okay? I want you to think about things that we have nowadays. Even just think of like the technology we use. Doesn't that improve over time? It seems like technology is able to do fancier, more, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Fancier, more in-depth type of tasks, right? Compared to the technology even just a year ago or a few years ago. Obviously, there was not the type of technology we know of nowadays, like electronic technology, but the term technology itself is really just inventions or innovations that help you complete tasks, right? So, hominids learned how to make better, what I want you to write in that box, I'm sorry, I had something in my eye, is the word tools, okay? Tools. Now, you can also write weapons on the line with tools, but when you think about it, weapons are tools, so they go hand in hand. So hominids learned to make better tools. And in this Middle Stone Age, this Mesolithic era, They also learned how to grow their own food. Now, don't you think that would help make their lives a wee bit easier? Oh my goodness, yes. Because remember, before they were having to be nomads. They didn't have any other choice but to be nomads because they had to eat and drink, so they had to travel around looking for a food source. Once people really kind of learn how to grow their own food, that changes the game, because then they can be a bit more settled, right? And if they also learn how to build better tools, yeah, when they go out hunting, my goodness, they might have an easier time taking down a big animal, but also they could use them for planting food, right? Tilling up the earth in order to put seeds in the ground to grow food. So this improvement on tools was helpful, not just for the hunters, but also for those who really are going to become farmers. And if you need more time, remember, pause the screen and then unpause when you are ready to continue. Ta-da! So, the part of the Middle Stone Age where these early humans not only developed more improved tools, but they, ding ding, figured out how to grow their own food, that is really like the jump start to the New Stone Age, okay? So, I gave you a fancy schmancy term for the Old Stone Age. I gave you a fancy schmancy word for the Middle Stone Age. I'm gonna give you one more, because if you flip to the back of this note page, you will see a new Snapfact box. And at the top, it is titled New Stone Age. But like I said, I'm gonna give you the fancy term for that. The New Stone Age we called the Neolithic era. Neolithic. So once again, you wanna just start throwing out really fancy, in-depth terminology at dinner tonight or whenever you're hanging with your family or friends. Neolithic era is for the New Stone Age. So, New Stone Age. People no longer needed to be nomads. Now, some still chose to wander around finding food, right? But they didn't have to do that anymore. That wasn't required. They kind of had a choice now, because of the fact that they learned how to grow their own food. So instead of needing to hunt after animals because there was no other way to come about food, if you could plant your own, you could kind of be a bit more settled in one area. Perhaps create dwellings of which to live in near the food that you plant. You're not having to constantly be on the move. Doesn't that sound like a little less stressful? I do. So this first box on the back page where it says New Stone Age, it says people no longer needed to be nomads because, here's something else, farming and domesticating animals allowed people to be more settled in one location. Because think about this, when we talk about farming, does farming include only planting and growing crops? I mean, that's a lot of it, yes. But we also think of like livestock when we talk about farming, right? We talk about different animals that might be associated with a farm. Now, domesticating animals, and I'll put the note page in front of the screen in a second so you can see the spelling for everything, but I just want to talk first. Domesticating animals means taming animals, keeping perhaps once wild animals in a location, all right? We do that nowadays. Like, we drive past farms, and what types of animals do we see? We might see chickens, we might see cows, and they're not just off wandering in the middle of the street. No, we keep them on like a farm perimeter, all right? Back then, they needed to learn how to domesticate and tame animals. And they would kind of breed them, so they kept having more and more animals, because from animals you can have a source of meat. You could also have a source of things to drink, for example, like milk. Also, And this goes for animals that they would go out and hunt too. You have all parts of the animal to use. The bones could be used to be made weapons and tools. The hide could be used to make like blankets or clothing or baskets or other carrying type equipment, right? People way back in the day, and you know what, a lot of people nowadays too, they made good use of all parts of the animal, okay? So, I'm going to hold up this note box for your Snapfact Notes. Is that centered? Oh, there we go. Okay. My hand's a little shaky because I've had a lot of coffee. I'm going to try to hold this still. And remember, if you need to pause the screen to get the rest of the note in, go for it, and then unpause when you are ready. Gosh, being able to farm, plant your own crops, and domesticate animals was hugely beneficial. And remember, beneficial means helpful to these early people back in the Stone Age. Now, I also want you to take into consideration, I'm sure it goes without saying, but just to remind you, do you think their farms back then looked like farms we have today? No. No. But was still a huge accomplishment. Really, like I said, farming, think of farming itself as an invention. Domesticating animals was an invention. These things had to be thought of and then invented before they could be implemented and used. So, the next box says New Stone Age continued, because I have a couple more things to say about the New Stone Age. It says, people were learning how to grow better, more useful plants. Okay, so in other words, a variety of plants. And if you have a variety of plants, you have a variety of things to eat, right? Which is nice. Raise your hand if you, even though you're at home, you can still raise your hand to yourself. Raise your hand if you like eating a variety of foods. I know I do, right? You have choices. Now, in this next box, I also gave you a space to write down what domesticate means from the box before, where we talked about domesticating animals, and I know I verbally gave you the definition, but this is where I would like you to write the definition. So I'm going to hold my page up in front of the screen again, and you are going to write down what's supposed to go in the blanks. And remember, pause if you need more time to get everything filled in. All right? So, to domesticate animals means to tame an animal and keep it as a pet or for a farm. Very, very helpful for these early hominids. And if you're wondering, Miss Flint, oh my gosh, why do you have green sticky notes all over your paper? It's just to kind of help you zero in on the box that we are talking about and taking notes for in the moment. Here we go. We're just gonna keep rocking and rolling. So, the next box is such a fun word, and I'm going to use it a lot, and we're going to be referencing it a lot, not just through our Stone Age unit, not just through our Ancient Civilizations unit, through a lot of our units, okay? So, first of all, let's define the word innovation. It almost kind of sounds like the word invention, doesn't it? Well, they go hand in hand, okay? So an innovation is a new idea, a new discovery, a new invention, and it's anything new that someone has thought up, discovered, invented that can improve a people's way of life. That can improve a people's way of life. They are really useful. They're extremely beneficial and helpful. Okay? Now, different types of innovations can become a lot more complex and continue to become even more helpful over time. Because a lot of times, people then improve on the improvements, right? And then you just get better models of things. And thus then they have more use, and then they can be even more beneficial to people. I also just want you to take a second, and I want you to think about some innovations nowadays. What are things that people have invented that we nowadays benefit from? I can think of a lot, right? So one thing you might be thinking of is electricity. They didn't have electricity back in the Stone Age. Remember, we're just talking about nowadays inventions. I'm thinking maybe even something like a mechanical pencil. You don't have to go sharpen your pencil every time the lead wears down. You can just click, 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 right? You've seen me use this a ton in class because it's my coffee Yeti. But this is also an innovation. People thought of, hey, what's a way that someone's beverage can be either really, really hot or stay really, really, really cold? That's helpful to a lot of teachers. We even have things like masks, right? This is even an innovation, okay? I bet, whatever room you're sitting in right now watching this, if you look around your room, it is filled of innovations because everything that is in our life had to be invented at one point in time and then probably improved upon. What I'm recording this on right now is my phone. Phones nowadays, are they what phones were like back when phones were invented? No. Goodness no. Phones can do a lot more than they could back when they were first invented. Okay, so innovations, they help improve a people's way of life. All right, things that were thought up, created, discovered, invented, that are helpful and help improve people's way of life. Now, I'm defining innovations for you because we're going to talk about a few of the innovations from the Stone Age. Spoiler alert. So, I know that I brought up in class, for those of you who weren't in class, you're going to hear it for the first time now, how sure there were tools and weapons that the hominids of the Stone Age used that we, if we were to see a picture of them, might not think are all that fancy or schmancy, or, oh, I'm sure we've seen better models in the store. Would they have known any different? No, that's what they had access to. That's what they used. So if you have nothing to compare it to, that's like the best thing in that time for them to use. So when we talk about weapons back then or tools for them to use, I don't necessarily want you sitting there thinking, well, the axe that I saw at True Value could work a lot better than the axe back then, which was just a sharpened rock tied with a vine to a stick. Remember, that's what they created, and it's amazing even as it is that they came up with that idea in the first place, because them coming up with that invention, that innovation, throughout time is what led to the models of types of tools and weapons that we have nowadays. The idea had to start somewhere. They started way back in the day with those hominids of the Stone Age. So we're going to go through just a few, not all, just a couple of some helpful innovations throughout the Stone Age. Now, this goes through the final 3 Snapfact boxes on this page, all right? And then we're going to conclude this video because we will pick up with the page 2 of notes that I give you when I see you in class. Sound good? Fully remote friends, don't worry, you're going to get a video of page 2 notes when we get there. Awesome? Yay! So, some helpful innovations throughout the Stone Age. Number 1, I would like you to write spears and hatchets. And number 2, I want you to write cave drawings. Now I'm going to talk about these 2 things as I hold my Snapfact page up in front of the camera so you can listen as you jot down some notes, okay? I also in parentheses have what spears and hatchets were made of, although I'm sure you can all think, what do you think? Made from like sharpened stones and rocks or animal bones, right? In cave drawings, well, probably mushed berries, right? Have you ever mushed a berry before and then you get stuff smeared on your fingers? Well, they could smear in by like mushed berries or perhaps blood from an animal, or even like carve into cave walls with sharpened stones or rocks, okay? And this would help pass along and share and record information from maybe other people going through the area. They didn't really have a definitive system of writing yet, remember? That itself had to be invented. We're getting there. We're not quite there yet. So here's Snapfact box number 1. Okay? Not number 1. for the first and second innovation. That's what I meant to say. So spears and hatchets. I have a question for you. I want you to think about what it would be like to take down a great big animal you're hunting with only spears that you've handmade from sharpened rocks and stones and hatchets that are also made from sharpened rocks and stones. Those are things that you have to hold with your hands, right? So in other words, you're gonna have to get up real close and in person with the animal that you're hunting. Don't you think that'd be really dangerous? It was risky to be a hunter way back in the Stone Age, especially with the types of animals that they were hunting. We're also going to get more into that on another note day, okay? Cave drawings, like I said, those were a super helpful innovation because of the fact that they could share and record and remember information. Kind of like how we jot down notes on paper, or perhaps send an email or call and tell someone over the phone. This was a way that they communicated. Pause the video if you need another second. I don't know why my computer speaker is making that noise behind my phone. I hope it's not too distracting on the recording. All right. Innovation 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Now, number 3, bow and arrow. Okay. You know how my speaker is having a hissy fit, so I'm just gonna move it because that noise, I can only imagine it's probably louder when you're listening to the video. Bow and arrow. Remember how I just said if you're using a handheld hatchet or a handheld spear, you've got to get like right up close and personal to the animal that you're hunting? Bow and arrow helped with that a little bit. You could be a little more at a distance, but you're still going to have to be participating in some danger because taking down big game animals with these types of tools, definitely useful tools, but still dangerous because you're still in very close range, which is another reason why they would always go out and hunt in groups, right? Teamwork makes the dream work. Number 4 is fire. And number 5, domesticating animals. We just talked about that a second ago, but guess what, you guys? That was an idea that someone had to think up and then implement, right? So that counts as an innovation too. Pause this if you feel like it might take you a second to get it jotted down, so you make sure that you spell everything correctly and put the correct information in the correct space. Now, very similar to the hatchets and spears, bow and arrows, that arrow tip was made out of very sharpened rocks and stones as well, right? And then that would be attached to wood as the arrow and for the bow, right? They really used all the resources that they could find. Oh, I'm sorry, I think that was a little out of frame. I hope this is more helpful. Okay, I'm going to go to our very last one. Hooray! Now, 6, 7, and 8 in this third box. 3 more examples of helpful innovations that our earliest people, our hominids, developed during the Stone Age. Animal fur and hides, okay? And they used those for things like clothing, blankets, like baskets, okay? Other like bag type things of which to carry. That would have really benefited those people who were gatherers, or once they developed farming, this whole concept of farming, like perhaps carrying seeds. Like I said, people would use all parts of the animal that they hunted. They wouldn't just eat the meat. They would use all parts of the animal. Number 7, needles for sewing. I mean, our clothes are sewn together mostly with like sewing machines, an invention and innovation that really benefits us nowadays, right? But do you think they had those back then? No, right? And so just like we still do some sewing with needles nowadays, and the needles are made out of metal and very fancy, back then they would use things like fish bones. They would sharpen them up and they would use them as needles for sewing. That's pretty clever, I think. Number 8, we have something called the ard and the plow, and we're going to get into this more next time when I have some visual aids for you. But really, these were more like farming tools. They would help break up the soil, till up that soil, which you need to do if you are going to be planting seeds for the crops that you want to grow, right? So I'm going to hold this up. Please make sure that you transfer your spelling nicely, and pause the video if you need it to be set there in order to get all your notes. That's the handy thing about the video, you can just press pause. Now, my sweet friends, this is the conclusion of our note page number 1. All right, what I'm going to have you do, like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, is take a picture of the front of your note sheet, as well as I'll take the sticky notes off. I thought it was a helpful way to not be so distracting seeing information in the other Snapfact boxes. And also take a picture of the back part of your page, upload it into Google Classroom. All right, and that way I will see and I will know if you listened to this video and then filled in the rest of your notes. Like I said, you're going to need to have already done this step for where we will pick up next time we see each other together. Okay, so I miss you guys. Like I said, this was Friday. When you watch this, it won't be Friday, but it's weird not having you here. I miss you all, and yeah, bye.